a pretty pro-consumer executive order. Trump on Monday, so 2 days ago from the day of that we're recording this, signed an executive order basically saying that pharmaceutical manufacturers, the drug companies, are no longer going to be allowed to sell their drug prices any higher than the lowest pricing they sell to any other developed country, which is crazy because right now, the way the drug industry largely works is that drug companies make these drugs and then sell them to Americans at like 10 times the price of the rest of the world because the rest of the world doesn't agree to buy them for that price. But we have this whole fucked up healthcare system where it's like everything's crazy expensive and there are these rebates. It's this whole mess. So he signed an executive order saying that the health secretary, which is RFK Jr., has a 30-day deadline to tell drug makers that they have to lower prescription drug costs. Yeah, if you pull this up, Harry. And so what they're saying is, hey, all the drug manufacturers who right now, because we have a free market healthcare system, are going to have to lower it and charge the same prices that they do in other countries, which again might literally be a tenth of the price. Like if you go to the UK pays, a fraction of what we pay in the US because our system just kind of cycles this massive expenditure and then we or companies all pay for it. And it's a disaster. That being said, not clear if this is going to hold up in any way. This is very like it's you don't really have my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong. The health secretary does not have the power to go to a bunch of drug makers and like impose fees or anything. There's not a law that allows him to do this. So Trump is like trying to will this thing into existence. But in theory, a lot of people would support it. Maybe it becomes a bipartisan thing in Congress. All the people, I was looking into who supports and opposes this. All the people who support it, it's like Bernie Sanders, AARP, like all the people who deal with health insurance and like trying to get seniors medicine, the people who have been burned by having to pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for medicine in the US for some goddamn fucking reason. And then I looked into all of the like supporters and it's like this pharmaceutical company, this drug care consortium, this here, everybody who's opposed to it. So it's exactly what you think. Everybody is on board with this except the drug companies. And the single argument is it'll reduce innovation. And it's like, man,
but it doesn't. It is cool. I think this is one of those things where I saw the clip this morning of him. He delivers, his Trump way of speaking about like, I have this friend. He's a lovely guy. He's a fat guy. He gets Ozempic and he called me and he told me it's $1,200 in New York and it's only $88 in London. And I said, that's awful. And then, he's building up to something that's really good and reasonable, something that actually, all people would want this 100%. Lower prescription drug costs. And my dad was the person who sent me the clip, and he weirdly, it wasn't a link, he downloaded it and sent me like the file, and then also it had Chinese subtitles. So
your dad's on fucking Weibo getting his news updates on.
Yeah, and I was like, Dad, where are you watching this? I thought that, but this was one of those things where it's like I kind of will believe it when I see it, but if it happens, this would be fantastic.
Right. The odds that this goes through.
Let me jump into that. Yes, I want to talk about this. Is like, okay, two things. Number one, you mentioned free market. I think I just want to push back, and I would say our healthcare system is nothing like a free market. It is completely it's immersed with middlemen and rules and regulations.
By free market, I mean the drug manufacturers can set whatever prices they want.
Yes.
And there isn't a government agency basically enforcing some degree of pricing. Even in the case like the UK, you basically have a single healthcare provider. So if a drug company from the US goes to, like Ozempic, for example, goes to Novo Nordisk, they go to the UK and they say, we want to sell you Ozempic for $1,000 like we do to the Americans.
Yeah.
Britain says no, fuck off. And they keep saying no, fuck off up until Novo agrees to sell it for like $100.
Yeah,
we don't have that in America. There's all these different players.
That is a free market though. That is like them saying we'll walk. If you don't if you go to the store and they want to sell you a car for $1 million and you say no until they lower the price.
But in America, the insurance companies, the farm, they all have the option to not buy these things. They just don't have enough negotiating power. It is a market.
Well, okay, here's the thing. In America, the like Medicare, Medicaid, the government is not allowed to negotiate. Legally, the pharmaceutical lobby has written it in.
So that is,
you cannot negotiate. They cannot use their market power. Like, let me give you an example of Walmart.
Shut up. And don't come from my free markets.
Example is like, this is not a great example, but off the top of my head, like Walmart.
Right.
If they go to Tide and want them to lower the price of the detergent, they do this all the time. They say, hey, listen, we're not going to let you be on our shelves unless you lower the price. So Tide, knowing that they have access to all these consumers, does their best to lower the price.
Yeah, no, you're
but
right.
America
Medicare and Medicaid specifically can't, so that fucks it up.
So I think that's okay.
Yeah.
So, but I want to say also, I am not of the opinion that pure free market works for healthcare because, if I go to buy a Honda Civic and I don't like it and they give me a bad price, I can go buy a Toyota and it's fine. But if I go to buy insulin and I don't like it and I can't go, I die.
Yeah.
Like health, it doesn't, the ability to die, you cannot walk. The ability to walk is like the core essence of a good market. And like, you can't do that with healthcare. You will die. So I 100% agree.
He has so many stupid examples.
What I want to say here is this thing that Trump is talking about, this matching US healthcare prices to like the Europe and other countries, is what Bernie Sanders has been pushing for a long time. Like this is a core platform of his original run for president. And RFK mentioned that in this speech. He mentioned like this is a part of Bernie Sanders ran on these exact ideas, but they never got him through. So, and Bernie's response to this, which I think was profound, which is like, hey, this has been tried before. Trump himself signed a similar deal in term one, and the courts always block it. And so it becomes this thing where you get this headline and you're like, hey, this is great. But the only real way to do it is to push comprehensive legislation through Congress, which they never do. So it's like becomes this executive order where it's almost like setting up to have the courts block it so you can then denigrate judges. Like that's, to me, it feels more like, hey, I can do this thing that everyone agrees is great. It will get blocked by the courts because we're not doing it the normal right way. And then I can go, why the fuck are judges allowed to do this? Let's get rid of judges, which is like a real, like a weird bad lineup. Like I you know what I'm saying? I don't like the way that's headed. It's like setting up for an easy win against the judicial system, which is not.
So I completely get what you're saying. For people who have kind of not followed this deeply, largely what Trump has done in his administration so far is drop tons of executive orders, which, to be clear, they have less legal authority than Congress, who is the one who's supposed to be writing laws. So it's like he can write these, it's not supposed to be a law, but he can write these like orders of what happens, right? But if Congress comes in and overwrites it, or the judicial system overwrites it, it's gone. So this executive order that he signs is only relevant up until the legal system confirms, yes, this is legit.
Right.
Or Congress comes in and like reinforces it with a real law. So this is a vibe. He's shooting a vibe out into the world. And if a federal judge comes in and like tries to stop it, it will go.
And I just want to be clear, he has written this exact vibe at the end of his last term. It was
different. It was only for Medicare.
Okay. But it was the idea of matching drug prices to them. Yeah. And that got blocked. And this is more expansive and will likely get blocked.
Yeah.
So like if you're a president who has a problem with the judiciary, one thing you could do is say, I think everyone should get free candy, executive order. And then when the judge goes, you can't have that authority. You can't do that. Then suddenly you go, wow, the judges want to block your free candy. And it's a problem. So like, I think Bernie's response to this was measured, which is like, hey, I agree with the theory of this, but the way you are doing it seems like a different goal. Yeah. And that's my pushback. So, it's like, I agree with this idea.
Yeah. So I'm on the same page. I think what I'm hoping for with this, I think it's very unlikely this stays. There's no, obviously the pharma industry is like one of the heaviest lobbying, right? So they're going to do everything they can to stop this. In theory, though, people are so pissed off at the pharma industry, and this headline is big enough that this would then incentivize Congress to act, right? If you can, because like I didn't even know that he did anything like this in the last Trump election, because the Trump administration, because the first Trump term was so obscenely chaotic. He signed that in like 2019 or 2020. So this is around January 6th, right? Like that got completely overshadowed by everything else.
That was big.
Yeah, and I think this has more of an opportunity to get like bipartisan people across the board to be like, yes, this should be happening. At the very least, Medicare and Medicaid should be able to negotiate prices, because that shit's crazy.
100 million %.
I read that that's changing soon, but I didn't read more into why, because that's baffling.
And I just want to, you could jump in here a second. I just want to say, like, you touched on it, but it really is like one of the deepest rots at the heart of our system is that we have an extraordinary number of well-paid pharma lobbyists, at least one per senator, one per congressman, one per legislator, that are just full-time job is to like funnel money into these people to make sure they don't make any progress on making healthcare better. 100% hate that. And I think this is against their interests. But I do want to say, like, the day this executive order came out or was announced, the headline, their stock prices dropped because they're like, okay, this is bad. And they have immediately bounced back and people have realized it's not going to get through. So an idea that has no chance of succeeding or isn't made is made for a headline and not for real things is almost just as bad. Like I want a real change. I don't want brownie points. I don't want someone.
Well, do you feel like do you feel like, so let's say he puts, so I agree this is largely performative. It is extremely unlikely this lands, but this is going to be talked about enough. I mean, we are talking about it as an example that in theory, the conversation is now increasing around this topic and we could move towards Congress enacting something like this sooner. And if him making what is, let's say this like vapid gesture, but if it results in people becoming angrier and more passionate and pushing Congress to do this earlier than they would have otherwise.
That's the point. Okay. So
that seems good to me.
In 30 days, when this is supposed to have happened, we're supposed to have dropped all their prices. Because right now, like insulin in America, $100. In Canada, $12.
Right.
Okay. In 30 days, they have to equalize. They have to figure that out. According to this executive order.
Fucking free, dude.
So when they don't do that in 30 days, are people going to get mad at Congress and say, hey, get this bill passed? Or are they going to get mad at the judiciary for blocking his law? And that is where I'm worried. If it's all setting up to get you mad at the judges, then I think that's kind of fucked because this is an executive order that has beyond his authority. But if you get mad at Congress and we go, hey, shut the fuck up, bipartisan, pass this, get pills lower price, then I'm all for it. I think, again, the spirit of this is one of the best things Trump has done. I totally agree with it. It's insane that we spend 4, 5, 10x for the same drug across a border. Like Canada is right there. It's the same company.
Canada
the same
is just
thing.
like, no, we're not going to fucking pay that much. And then in America, all the parties are just like, yeah, this is great because everybody benefits from it except patients.
Dude, the cable companies do the same thing with every small town in America where they lobby to make sure they can't have negotiating power over who lays cable wire. And it's great. We all pay more because no one's allowed to literally negotiate on a group of people. I agree.
It's free.
Anyway, you're
free market. Free.
I think you're jumping. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, your point about the lobbying was the main thing I wanted to get to. But I wanted to come back to what you said about R&D being the defense, because I think there's a very good point to be made here that this is often, and Trump brought this up, as in he thinks that the prices that the Americans are paying are basically subsidizing R&D that the other countries don't have to pay for because they pay such lower prices, right? However, something that I learned last year was that R&D is a bit of a myth in how drug companies actually choose to use the money that they have. And it is much safer for you, rather than developing some sort of new life-saving treatment, like spending a ton of money in order to cure some incurable disease or pursue something really niche and expensive, especially as medicine gets better over time, right? The things that are left are harder and harder to crack. We spent a lot of time talking about that in the last episode. The problem with R&D is a lot of the money just goes towards iterating on existing drugs so that you can renew licenses or patents on technology that basically already exists, mark it up, and resell it to people as an upgraded or a new version of the medication they're taking. And that is like 90% of R&D spending.
I saw, I can't remember
I would like to read more about that. I'm not trying to defend pharma companies here, but like,
because
it does take a lot to develop drugs.
No, absolutely. Think about it, even from a purely economic perspective, right?
Yeah.
And this is actually something was in Abundance. It talked.
Kill him.
It talked about how the people in the last few decades, there's decreasing motivation to spend money and take risks on new drug or scientific development because the return is way less certain.
Right.
And it is way better for you
like
to
the Kung Fu Panda 4 of medical innovations.
What was Lena Khan's example with, we could use something similar to those, why can I not think of the word? Inhalers, where they made the inhalers were about to become like public domain, and then they changed the plastic part of the cap on the inhalers so that they could renew the patent and continue charging a higher price.
They just made it worse. Like it has a little strap on there or whatever when you take the cap off so it stays on, but now it's annoying and people are annoyed. And that was the only thing they added to maintain the...
So most of drug R&D in the US, R&D expense is going into making iterative versions of drugs that already exist so they can renew their ownership over that thing and maintain the monopoly over that drug.
Yeah.
And I think that is the problem is when this defense comes up, including when Trump mentions it during that speech in his Trump fashion where he kind of explains it but doesn't identify it. It's very weird. But all I'm saying is that people rarely talk about that part. It's just like, well, it's getting put into discovering new cures for things, but that isn't really the case. And the financial incentives aren't necessarily there for it to be the case.
That completely makes sense. I agree with that. I just want to, I'm just always cautious when people's takeaway is like, fuck all these companies, they're pieces of shit. It's like, no, actually it's really important that companies develop new drugs, right?
Of
like this
course.
and I just want to make sure that we're also acknowledging that there is good to pharmaceutical companies making money. Should they be making this much money? No, I don't think so. Should they be doing what they're doing, like you just described, and doing iterative drugs and then using that as an excuse to profit like crazy? No, that's obviously bullshit, and that shouldn't happen. But we do need some kind of financial ability for drugs to be developed. And that's all. And even another angle of this is maybe what needs to change. The vast majority of the price of developing a new drug is actually trials. It is getting it through FTC. Oh my God, I'm blanking. FDA, yeah. So getting it through FDA. So that's where the majority of the cost of developing a drug comes from. And I've heard from multiple scientists, I don't know enough about this to comment on it, but it's a sentiment I've seen multiple times from biologists of the process to get new drugs approved is actually too arduous and cumbersome and expensive. And there might be a way to obviously not remove all clinical studies, but maybe streamline it in some way or make it more efficient or something, have certain rules for different types of drugs so you can incentivize a company to develop a new drug without them needing to make some obscene amount of profit on the back end.
Yeah,
that's all.
Absolutely.
There's obviously, like everything, there's nuance. And the system that we have is abysmal.
It's terrible.
Is abysmal.
I'll just say I looked into the numbers because I had a similar thought, but I wanted to get the stats, and they're pretty damning for the pharma companies in that the majority of the profit they make goes over half goes to marketing versus R&D. And, the bonuses they're paying out to executives.
Right, it's insane.
It's just not enough going to R&D that you'd expect this argument to work. And I will say, I keep using the insulin example because it's the one I can remember easily, but there's other drugs. But like insulin in Canada sells for $12 a vial, and it costs them $2 to $4 to make. It also costs $2 to $4 to make, and they sell it for $104 in America. That extra, a $12 profit, $12 to $4 is $8 profit. That's a huge profit margin already in Canada. They're making enough to be a justifiable working business if that was the same everywhere. So the idea that it has to be 1,000% or 2,000% is absurd. Like it wouldn't exist in any market where they hadn't captured the government and are using it as a,
and particularly when the profit comes from somebody.
Yeah,
the person paying the increased prices is patients in America. Yeah. It isn't like
often it's our own tax dollars. So again, we have a massive budget deficit problem. A huge part of that goes to Medicare and Medicaid, which are just paying absurd above list prices for all these drugs. The American taxpayer is a global pay pig.
It is crazy when you think about the expenditure per capita ratio of our healthcare spending compared to other countries.
For lower quality
and
we don't live as long. Exactly. We're sicker, we're angry, we're more depressed. Like it's not working, we're paying more. It is,
bring the Bible back.
and we let God back into this country and into Japan and into...
I want God injected into my body by Novo Nordisk. One thing, I got it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
AI might help.
Dude.
No. So
get in on that.
No. So really, just very briefly, what we talked about last episode, if you watched the whole thing, towards the end, we talked about the major breakthroughs in drug discovery because of the tools that people are developing. One of the things that makes me hopeful is that we can push back on pharma companies by basically saying, look, we are also developing tools to make drug creation 100 times cheaper or 1,000 times cheaper and faster. And if you do that, then this excuse of we need to make $20 billion to make the next drug, that falls away. And so I'm hopeful that will start to actually change.
Yeah, me too. I think the core, for me, the core rod of it is lobbying or the ability to just money in politics, Citizens United. Because, it's so funny that even big megacorps like Google with fiber or Amazon trying to do healthcare, they couldn't break in. Like they were so blocked by the regulatory middleman net that they couldn't even get in to compete, and they have all of the money. And no one can actually offer a better service at a lower price than these guys because they have completely monopolized the government to make sure that they have the fattest margins. That's Big Short.
That's what I was thinking. Don't talk about my margins.
Nice and fat. Make sure you make it in women's or whatever make it in men's. That is, to me, it's one of the more radicalizing things. Like when you read about American healthcare, there's just nothing good about it. And it's not somebody getting, a worse product at a worse price. They're just dying. Like people are dying. Families are dying every day. It's horrendous. We have such a shit healthcare system for such a rich country. And
you might even
push back slightly.
You might take action.
There's ways that are positive. There's a lot of the best medical talent ends up coming to the U.S. because of these kind of gross profit.
I do
incentives.
agree that the richest people.
There are some diamonds in the rough, but broadly, it's pretty shit. Yeah.
If you're talking about like quality of care, if you have unlimited money,
it's excellent.
Boss, it is.
We have a good system
Cedar
for rich
Sinai
people.
will.
Yes. Rich people, it's solid. It's very good, but obviously that is not the best.
I see what you're saying. If redeeming point is like there is a need for a private people to have the motivation to seek outcomes in healthcare. There is a reason to have that. I think, I think to me, the COVID vaccines are actually a good example of that. It's like, sure, private companies
Bill Gates had a private motivation to put a microchip in it. And
but even that's not a great example because basically the governments started it by saying, we'll pay you a shitload of money. We guarantee this much business, right?
No, but that's what I mean is like there's a utility of those private companies in that situation.
Sure, yeah.
And I think they're, anyway.
I just want to at least vocalize the nuance because I think it's so easy to be like, fuck the whole system. And it's like, no, hold on. There's a lot going on here. There are things we need to preserve, even if we radically change things, right?
You might have a good perspective on this with how many of your family are working.
Right. Everybody in my family
because
are doctors. Like, so to say like all the healthcare is worse, everything, it's like, no, this is not true. You have like really, really smart, talented people in the medical industry, but you have perverse incentives. So for example, if you go to medical school and then you come out of it $300,000 in debt.
Yeah.
And the option is, do you want to go be a primary care physician where you have to like arguably, harder is the wrong way of putting it, but it's an extremely stressful, high volume job where you're cranking through patients. You don't get to like really follow up with people in a meaningful way because you're just trying to get through as many as possible. And you get paid less, a lot less than if you go become a specialist and open your own clinic, right? You become a dermatologist or a surgeon or whatever else. It causes us to have a lack of healthcare providers in primary care, which is some of the most important if you were talking about preventative medicine or whatever else. And then people like, in many cases, the best people, if you're getting surgery, cancer treatment. A lot of people come to America for the best cancer treatment. And
somebody listening is in their derm residency right now and they're nodding their head. Like,
fuck yeah.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, I'm helping skin.
So.
I've never talked to a doctor or a healthcare professional who has ever said anything positive about the insurance companies. Ever.
Drug manufacturers and insurance companies are pretty universally reviled and seem just total shit.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,